Before we get into the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember, guys, this podcast posts each and every single Sunday. We run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. This first news story is a very interesting one. It comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins workout kicker Blair Walsh. The Dolphins are the last remaining team in the NFL without a kicker, but they could be getting closer to finding their man. Miami tried out free agent kicker Blair Walsh. Field Yates of ESPN.com tweets. Walsh spent 2017 as the Seahawks kicker, but connected on just 72.4% of his tries. The Dolphins, meanwhile, employed Cody Parkey, who sank 91.3% of his attempts. Now that Parkey has signed with the Bears, the Dolphins are rummaging through the remaining options. Walsh excelled right out of the gate with the Vikings in 2012, earning a Pro Bowl and first-team All-Pro honors with a league-leading 35 made field goals on 38 attempts. He made a similarly strong showing for Minnesota again in 2015, but he was axed by the Vikes in November of 2016 after some costly misses. The Dolphins could also find their next kicker in the draft. Reportedly, Miami is considering New Mexico's Jason Sanders, Miami's Michael Badgley, Auburn's Daniel Carson, and Florida's Eddie Pinheiro. So this is interesting because Cody Parkey actually had a very, very good season with us. He only missed a couple of field goals. He was pretty clutch for us. He kicked in some bad weather situations pretty well. The thing about Blair Walsh, which I honestly doubt, would be the final guy. I think the final decision. I don't think Blair Walsh is going to be the Dolphins kicker, but if he somehow was the Dolphins kicker, he's just super inconsistent. Ever since he missed the field goal in the Seattle playoff game at home, he's just never been the same. He used to be a really, really good kicker. He's a talented kicker. Like, he can kick from any distance. He's got a lot of range and accuracy, but his mental part of the game, it just has never been the same since he missed the field goal in the playoff game. So I don't think that would be the greatest decision. I think Sebastian Janikowski is still out there. Also, sticking with special teams, I think the Dolphins do need a punter. I do not think Matt Hawk had anywhere near. I just don't think he'll ever be a really good punter in the league. He did not have a good season at all. Obviously, we were punting the ball a lot, but he was very inconsistent. So maybe we go after Marquette King, and I think we could probably get him cheap too. So we could have a whole Raiders secondary or special teams. I think Sebastian is still a free agent. I'm not completely 100% sure on that. You guys would have to let me know down in the comment section below. Alright, this next news story, Dolphins could explore trade market for several positions. This is a very interesting news story. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. The Dolphins are searching for help via the trade market at the league meeting in Orlando, according to Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. Although Miami made several free agent additions over the past 2 weeks, the club is still hoping to add depth at tight end, linebacker, running back, and defensive tackle, per Salguero. With no trade imminent, the Dolphins could conceivably trade from their stable of defensive ends. Miami currently has Cameron Wake, Robert Quinn, Charles Harris, William Hayes, and Andre Branch on its depth chart, meaning it could potentially absorb the loss of at least one pass rusher. Branch, who is scheduled to earn a fully guaranteed base salary of $7.9 million in 2018. This would be a logical candidate to be moved, per Salguero. Free agent linebacker Neville Hewitt, we'll get to that here in a second. I got a little ahead of myself here. So, sticking with this topic, the Dolphins are still exploring more trades, which is very interesting. So, obviously, the list of things that they think they still need to be filled: running back, defensive tackle, linebacker, tight end. I think tight end is the biggest hole there. Running back, I think you can easily fix in the draft. I think the depth at running back is ridiculous in this year's draft. We could possibly get a Nick Chubb or Sony Michel, who I think Sony Michel, out of anybody, even like a Darius Geis, I feel like Sony Michel fits Adam Gase's system to a T. He comes from a two-back system in Georgia. He was very successful in that system. He doesn't need a lot of touches like some of these other running backs in this draft class. So his transition to a two-back system, I think, would be seamless. And I think, like I said, he needs very limited touches to be successful. And I think he fits the system more than any running back in the draft, with his versatility in the pass game and running the rock. So I think we can easily fix that in the draft. What do you think about tight end? Possibly could fit that in the draft. I don't think that's a first 2-round issue, though. If you can somehow find a Mark Andrews in the 3rd round, which I think is very unlikely, then I think you pull the trigger there. But I don't think addressing the tight end position in the first 2 rounds is something that the Dolphins should do. Because we have other needs, and there's just the talent pool in other positions. Like, there's too many good players at 11, and then in the 2nd round, there's also like a Sony Michel, maybe a Lamar Jackson to fill in that backup quarterback role. You never know. So I think the 2nd round, there's just too many candidates above a tight end that I would take before I would take maybe a Mike Gesicki or a Goddard or somebody like that. And in terms of the other positions, defensive tackle, I don't think we need a starter. I think Jordan Phillips. Now there's a lot of ifs here. Hopefully, if Jordan Phillips lives up to his potential and is more consistent, which he showed last year that he could do, and he has suffered some injuries here and there, so that's maybe a concern. Devon Godshaw, we're hoping can build off his rookie year and really develop into a full-time starter, which I think he can do. Vincent Taylor, I think, is going to be a career rotational role player, who I think hopefully he can stick the landing there, because that's still a big if. So the Dolphins are in desperate need of a defensive tackle. And in terms of the other positions, running back, like I said, we could fix. Tight end, we could fix in round 3 or 4 if we absolutely had to. And it's not necessarily a need with the Dolphins in terms of what I'm talking about with the 1st and 2nd round. I just think it's the best player available. There are just too many really, really good players at 11 that are going to be there because of all the quarterbacks that are going to go in the top 10. There's going to be so much residual talent because of the exploding bomb of quarterbacks that you're going to be able to pick from. Like, if we got, let's say we did get Derwin James and Lamar Jackson, or Derwin James and Sony Michel. That is one heck of a draft right there, in my opinion. I think any of those players are going to be very good pros. Pro Bowl caliber players, especially Derwin James, who I think is a franchise safety, who I think is going to be a perennial Pro Bowler for his entire career. Lamar Jackson is a developmental quarterback, which is perfect fit for what the Dolphins need. They don't need a starter right away. Lamar Jackson has a higher ceiling than I think anybody in this draft, even Josh Allen. If he ever can figure it out from the pocket, and he doesn't even have to be a great pocket passer. We see what Cam Newton is capable of doing. If you give him an offense where running with the quarterback is a primary need for that offense, like in a Cam Newton offense, where he can carry a game. I watch every Panthers game every year because my brother is a huge Panthers fan, and I always watch the games with him. What they were able to do with Cam Newton and the way that he can take over a game with his legs is like nothing we've ever seen before. And I think what the NFL is today, which is getting more and more shotgun heavy, option heavy, read option heavy than it ever has, I think this style of play in the NFL today fits Lamar Jackson like no other. And I think scouts and GMs are overlooking that a little bit. So getting say we did get Lamar Jackson and Derwin James in round 1 and round 2, that could be a historical draft for the Dolphins franchise. And I'm not even joking around, because I think Derwin's a perennial Pro Bowler. Lamar Jackson has a chance to be Cam Newton-esque in terms of his dominance in the league. You don't always have to be putting touchdowns. Cam Newton shows you do not have... quarterback can score in many different ways, is what I'm trying to say. Cam Newton scored 45 touchdowns, including rushing touchdowns, in his MVP season. In his rookie season, he scored over 30 touchdowns. Touchdowns are touchdowns. I don't care how you get them. They're going to be touchdowns either way. That's 7 points. So I think Lamar Jackson is being undervalued a little bit, and especially in today's game, where I think his style of play fits it more than any other era, and it's not even close. So very interesting stuff. Like, one of my point is the Dolphins have a lot of options that they can explore, and I think that highlights it perfectly. I don't think they necessarily need to do a player-for-player trade. If they can stockpile picks with maybe an Andre Branch or I don't know who else. I don't really want to trade William Hayes, Charles Harris, Robert Quinn, and Cameron Wake. Maybe even Cameron Wake. I would be willing to separate with Wake, which in a story here in a minute is going to contradict that. I don't think the Dolphins are going to trade Wake, but say you trade Andre Branch for, like, I don't know, a 4th and a 5th round pick. I think that's a good thing. Stockpile as many picks as you can, because I think this draft is very crucial for the Dolphins, and the Dolphins have a really, really good chance of selecting some very talented players because of the big quarterback boom that's going to happen in the first round. And again, if somehow we got Lamar Jackson and Derwin James in this draft, I would be the happiest person on the planet. Or Roquan Smith. Like, it doesn't really matter to me. Like, any of those high value players. If we pick Vita Vea from Washington, I'm going to lose my dang mind, I am not going to be happy about that. The last thing the Dolphins need is a nose tackle. I don't care. I don't think he'll ever develop into a great pass rusher. I think his ceiling's probably Haloti Ngata, and Haloti Ngata was never a dominant pass rusher. I do not think he can affect an NFL game like a Derwin James can, a Roquan Smith can, a Minkah Fitzpatrick, who could possibly be there, can, or whom else am I forgetting? Tremaine Edmonds. There's so many really, really good players that could be there at 11 that I know Vita Vea is going to be there. I just don't think he's a fit for the Dolphins and what they need. They need a bona fide superstar caliber playmaker on defense. And I think Roquan could be that, and I think Derwin could be that. I think Minkah could 100% be that. So those players I think are a higher priority than even a Vita Vea. So moving on from that, which is very interesting stuff. The Dolphins have a lot of options there in this upcoming draft. Next news story: the Jets sign linebacker Neville Hewitt. Not a whole lot. I mean, I don't know if we can go deeper into this. It sucks that we lost Neville Hewitt. Obviously, very interesting stuff. I mean, he was a huge. He played a lot of snaps in 2016 due to injuries, and played a lot of. He didn't play as many in 2017, but he still played a good amount. When he came back eventually. I thought Neville Hewitt was a very interesting prospect. He's very athletically gifted. He was a playmaker in training camp throughout the 2017 offseason. I mean, all you heard about was Neville Hewitt making plays. So hopefully the Jets aren't getting a steal, especially since how Todd Bowles can turn very average players into something pretty good in his system. So we'll see. Yeah, that's all for the really immediate news. We've got some... not a whole lot of moves the Dolphins have made since last week, but we got some other stuff for you guys right here. Next news story: Miami Dolphins expects new center guard to benefit quarterback Ryan Tannehill. This comes from the Miami Herald. The Miami Dolphins believe center Daniel Kilgore and guard Josh Sitton are going to have a positive impact on Ryan Tannehill. First of all, Coach Adam Gase thinks Tannehill is going to take fewer violent shots because of their talent. And secondly, Gase thinks these two players have experienced success and will be outstanding leaders. Gase had ultimate respect for departed Mike Pouncey, but it is true that due to hip injuries, Pouncey's practice time was limited. Gase thinks more consistent practice time with a unit of Laramie Tunsil, Josh Sitton, Daniel Kilgore, Jesse James, Juwan James should be beneficial. The Dolphins traded for Kilgore and let Pouncey go because they like Kilgore's strengths. Let's see here. Okay, here we go. Signing Sitton should put to rest the notion of the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins doesn't care about investing in guard play, which thank God they finally did. Gase thinks Tannehill is going to benefit from conversations with conversations with both linemen, which is very interesting. And we're going to read the quote right here. Quote: Ryan does a good job when he gets around guys. This is a quote from Adam Gase, by the way. Quote: Ryan does a good job when he gets around guys that he has played with. That have played with other guys and ask questions about how those guys did it as well as they did. These guys are always good informational-wise as far as what other teams have done, especially good teams. But getting a guy with that kind of veteran leadership that was excited to come for us and be an impact guy with some of our younger players, that was going to be good for us. So he's referring to Josh Sitton coming from Green Bay and playing with Aaron Rodgers and some of the things he can learn from Josh Sitton and learn from what Aaron did when Josh was around him and could pick on some of those things, maybe help his game out. So, which I thought was very interesting. So, basically, the reason I put this story in here was because I really do believe this offensive line is tremendous. I think in terms of stability and consistency and health, this offensive line is the best that Tannehill has ever played behind. It's not even close. It's not even nowhere near as close. And the talent level is not as good as the Unicorns were. It's not better than Brandon Albert, Laramie Tunsil, Mike Pouncey. It's not better than those guys. There's a Jermon Bushrod at the time. Even though I think I can make an argument that you can make an argument there that maybe it's a little bit more, even maybe the talent is on the same level, but that offensive line was very, very talented. This offensive line is very, very talented, and it's durable, and it's sustainable over a 16-game season. The only one that I worry about is Josh Sitton. But I think this article highlights that a great deal. This has way more depth than any of the other offensive lines that we've ever had. Sam Young is a bona fide very, very good backup. I don't think he's, like I said before, I don't think he's a great starter, but I think he's a great fill-in guy who can fill in for a couple games for you and give you some good snaps. So, and in a short span of time. So I think this offensive line is by far the most, like I said, durable and consistent that Tannehill's ever going to play behind. And the interior is probably the most talented he's played behind. People forget. So you're going to have Josh Sitton, Daniel Kilgore at center, and then on the right or left of, I think it's going to be the right, of Daniel Kilgore, because I think Josh is playing left. I could be wrong about that. But on the right of Daniel Kilgore, you're going to have either Jesse Davis or Ted Larson. And I think Jesse Davis is going to eventually win that. He's not the most physical run blocker, but he's a great pass blocker, and I think that ability alone should set him apart from Ted Larson, because I don't think Ted Larson does anything great, and I think Jesse Davis does that great. And by the way, Jesse Davis can play left or right tackle, and when he did play right tackle, he was tremendous. And same thing with Sam Young. So we have so much versatility on this offensive line if injuries do happen. So that is a big reason why I love the moves, and I think the Dolphins greatly improved this offensive line, and it should 100,000% help out Tannehill, not just off the field, but on the field especially should help him on the field. I cannot wait to see this offensive line play together, because I think they're going to be a very, very good unit. And I think we have the most talented group in the draft, or excuse me, in our division. And who knows, we could add Quentin Nelson if he's there in the first round, and we could have one of the more dominant offensive lines in the franchise's history, for God's sakes, with those guys in the interior. This next news story comes from the Palm Beach Post. Is the starting cornerback job Cordrea Tankersley's to lose? This is very interesting stuff. Tongue twister there. In an ideal world, cornerback Tony Lippett would return from his season-ending Achilles injury and compete with Cordrea Tankersley for a starting spot on the Dolphins. But Lippett's injury is historically difficult to bounce back from, and interestingly, Coach Adam Gase has expressed a certain mentality he wants Tankersley to have entering his second season. Adam says, quote, "We'd love to see Tankersley come in really with the mindset of that's his spot and he's not going anywhere, and really be aggressive as far as not let anybody take that spot that he has had." Tankersley started 11 games as a rookie, taking over for Byron Maxwell in Week 3. As a third-rounder out of Clemson, it was expected Tankersley would be eased into his career, but he responded fairly well when he was thrust into the lineup, demonstrating a physical, combative, and competitive brand of play. Tankersley had 0 interceptions, 7 pass defense, and 24 tackles as a rookie, memorably tipping a pass that was picked off by Rashad Jones to seal an upset victory at Atlanta last season. According to Pro Football Focus, Tankersley was ranked 93 among 121 eligible cornerbacks. Starter Xavier Howard was ranked 92. Considering this, how does Adam Gase feel about his cornerback group? Adam said, quote, "It's one of those positions you can never have enough of. We're always going to look to add at that position. You guys always talk about drafting a quarterback every year. Draft a corner every year. It's a tough position to play. It's becoming a position that is very high priced. Now all of a sudden we're looking at Xavier Howard's contract is coming up, and we'll see him getting better as well." So that's very interesting stuff. The best cornerback on the Dolphins, according to Pro Football Focus, was actually slot corner Bobby McCain, ranked 46. So this is a very interesting story. I really, really like how this Dolphins secondary is looking. Now, we don't know if TJ McDonald, let's say Minka Fitzpatrick is a Dolphin, or Derwin James is a Dolphin, who I think Minka can play safety as well, as among other things. Would be very, very interesting to see if TJ would be moved to linebacker, which would be a very interesting lineup for the Dolphins to test out, and I think would be successful. But I think the secondary is very, very talented. The Pro Football Focus ratings, I think, are very skewed when you watch those guys play. And I recently went back and watched Xavier Howard, and especially Bobby McCain, because I think Bobby McCain had a Pro Bowl caliber year with some of the plays he was making out there. I'm not even joking around. He played very, very well for us. I don't think he allowed a yard in like 4 consecutive games or something like that. It was something crazy like that. But Cordrea Tankersley, I thought, played very well for a rookie, especially a third-round pick who was supposedly going to be a developmental prospect coming out of Clemson, and I thought he played very, very, very well. I love the way he plays man coverage. He's very physical and is not scared of anybody, and I think Xavier Howard, second half of the season was tremendous. I thought he got his confidence back. He started to roll, and I expect him to build off of a very strong end to his season as well. So, and then you got Tony Lippett coming back, coming off of a 4-pick season before he was injured. The cornerback room is very deep and very young and very talented, so I'm very excited to see what they can do. This next news story comes from the Palm Beach Post. Dolphins coach Adam Gase has big plans for wide receiver Albert Wilson. This comes, I already said it comes from the Palm Beach Post. Don't be fooled by Adam Gase's jokes about his newest weapon in the pass game. He likes a laugh about Albert Wilson's 5'9" stature and how he towers over teammate Jakeem Grant. Offensive coordinator Dow Loggins, but he's ultra serious in what he thinks Wilson will add to the Dolphins. Gase surely knows Wilson isn't as good as Jarvis Landry, who was traded to Cleveland this month, but he believes he acquired a replacement with better speed and more versatility. He obviously is well suited for screen passes, but Miami will play him in the slot outside of the backfield, giving Gase a wide open opportunity to show off his creativity. Adam said, quote, "His speed is hard to ignore. We saw firsthand how fast he is and what he can do. Now he can stretch the field vertically. When you put the ball in his hands, he makes plays. I don't think I've seen too many wide receivers where a team actually handing the ball off to him and he's running between the tackles." He also said, quote, he has the toughness, he has the vision, and he has the ability to do a lot of different things, which is very intriguing to us. We feel like we have a lot of things that we can do with him." Again, that is from Adam Gase in his the league meeting in Orlando. Wilson, 25, is coming off his best NFL season with 42 catches, 554 yards, and 3 touchdowns for the Chiefs. His top game was the finale against Denver when he had 10 catches for 147 yards. This week before, against Miami, he had 3 for 36 yards. When Wilson signed, he described this as a chance he's been fighting for throughout his career and was energized by the thought of playing in Adam Gase's offense. Wilson said, quote, "I'm excited to see what I can do with it." Gase likes the idea for a 4 wide receiver set with Wilson and fellow newcomer Danny Amendola joining Kenny Stills and Devontae Parker. That sounds amazing. I just want to say that. The Dolphins are also better insured for Parker's injuries with Wilson and Amendola both coming aboard. Grant's still going to be competing for snaps as well, and running back Kenny Drake is working toward being a bigger part of the passing game. The best case scenario for Miami with Wilson is that it ended up coming talent just about to hit the prime of his career. If that materializes, his 3-year, $24 million contract will look brilliant. Not only does Wilson look like he's rising, but pairing him with Gase could be a great match. So very interesting stuff. I love the idea. Adam also said it in the coaches meet or the NFL league meeting that he wants to have Kenyon, Devontae, Albert, Danny, King. He wants somehow to get all of those guys on the field at the same time with Kenny and everybody else like that, and he thinks it's going to allow him to get better matchups. And Adam Gase loves creating mismatches in his offense. It's one of the great things that his offense does is it gets people mismatched on other people. Like sometimes you will see Kenny Stills on a linebacker. Somehow he figures those kinds of things out. He puts defenses in tough situations. And I think that lineup in that set would be very interesting to see how people will try to defend that, because you have a lot of quickness. You have a lot of obviously Danny Amendola is not the biggest athlete in the world, but you still have Albert Wilson he can take the top off of defense. Kenny Stills, Devontae Parker. And like I said, Danny Amendola, who's a polished receiver, who's a possession guy, who's one of the better ones in the league. So that presents a lot of issues for your defense. And if you can't go 4 or 5 deep in your cornerback room, and if we can spread them out and put Kenny down the field and motion him in the backfield or hand it off, or same thing with Albert Wilson, that presents a ton of mismatches on the field at once that could be very, very deadly. And especially with our offensive line now, we'll have all day back there to with our tackles to find somebody wide open. So I'm very excited to see with all of the variety of talent that we have and what they can do together on a week in, week out basis. It's going to be very interesting. This next news story, Miami Dolphins starting tight end for 2018, probably A.J. Derby. This is very interesting. This comes from the Palm Beach Post. Two key positions the Dolphins haven't addressed this offseason are tight end and linebacker. With the majority of free agency wrapped up, and at least until more players get cut, those figure to be priorities in next month's NFL draft. At tight end for now, Miami looks like it's going to proceed with A.J. Derby as his leader to win the starting job. He has 4 career starts and appears to be ahead of Marquise Gray and Thomas Durante, or however you say his name, as the team moves toward the upcoming season. Adam said, okay, this is a quote from Adam Gase. He said, quote, "We'll kind of see what we can do developing him. I think he's one of those guys that has a great feel in the slot and that one-on-one spot versus a safety or linebacker. We'll see how it plays out." The Dolphins are also recruiting 12-year veteran Anthony Fasano, who hasn't decided if he wants to keep playing. Derby 26 has a was a waiver pickup from Denver last season and caught 2 passes for 11 yards in 2 games with the Dolphins. He supposedly had an injured shoulder when the Broncos decided to let him go, but said that he was ready to play in the game when he arrived in South Florida. The Patriots made him a 6th-round pick in 2015, then traded him to the Broncos the following season. In 21 career games, he has 37 receptions, 404 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Almost all of that production came in Denver. Gase believes Derby has yet to get a full opportunity to see how good he can be, and it looks like he'll get that chance this season. Adam said, quote, "I'm really interested to see what I can do with him. Seeing him go out the first day and he's running around and he's fine, and I could tell the quarterbacks really liked working with him. Anytime you get a guy that has been a former quarterback, he seems to have a great feel for what has to get done, where to fit in, kind of what that guy is thinking, where to fit in. And he's talking about the quarterbacks. That was confusing. What the quarterbacks are thinking. Anyway. A.J. Derby is very interesting. I don't think he's a guy who can consistently or ever get you 100 yards in a game or be a dominant threat or a Pro Bowler, but I think he's a good role player. And he could definitely be an interesting guy. If, say, we got a Mark Andrews, we could have a 2 tight end set out there, and maybe put 2 tight ends in a slot. I think that'd be a very interesting lineup as well, because that would present a ton of mismatches. But A.J. Derby's an athletic tight end who's got great hands. He's a good route runner, not a great run blocker by any stretch of the imagination. But I think there were a couple of plays when he did get playing time against the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills where he had touchdowns. There was one where he had a wide open touchdown that Jay Cutler just threw him a terrible ball and threw right over his head. It was almost picked off. And against the Bills, there was a couple times where he's open as well. So I think A.J. Derby could be a pretty good role player in this offense and could make some big plays for us as well. This next news story also comes from the Palm Beach Post. Will Robert Quinn have a greater impact than defensive tackle Ndamukong Suh? Ndamukong Suh was scheduled to make about $17 million for the Miami Dolphins in 2018, with a cap hit of $26.1 million, including bonuses. The space needed to keep Suh on the roster was larger than any player in the NFL, behind only quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo and Matthew Stafford, which is insanity. That is insane. That is insane, man. Over three seasons, the Dolphins ended up paying Suh $60 million. Dolphins owner Stephen Ross is done paying Suh, but there is a salary cap hangover by virtue of cutting Suh with a June 1st designation. Suh will be gone, but he still will cost Miami $22.2 million in cap room over the next 2 seasons. Was it worth it? I'm going to go ahead and answer this for Mike Tannenbaum. No, but he's going to go ahead and answer for you. Quote, "Obviously, we wish we won more games with him." That's an interesting answer. Dolphins coach Adam Gase said, quote, "I think it was probably just the right time for us. You have to look at everything financially. Suh was a dominant player, but he plays the defensive tackle position, and the Dolphins came to the conclusion, as most NFL teams previously had, that it could no longer justify allocating all that money to an interior lineman." Tannenbaum correctly noted that the cap space saved on Suh's deal allowed the team to acquire quarterback crutching defensive end Robert Quinn from the Rams. With the saved money on the Quinn contract, the Rams moved to sign Suh. It was essentially a swap. Though the Rams will be celebrated for bringing a star to Hollywood, one who may very well wreak havoc alongside Aaron Donald, it is fair to wonder if Quinn will have a greater impact on Miami's defense than Suh would have had. So they're not comparing who's going to have the better career from this point on. They're saying maybe Robert Quinn will have a bigger impact than Sue did when he was a Dolphin. So that's what they're saying. Let's see here. Sue played a position that can be very difficult to destroy games from. Too often, a pair of low to middle tier offensive linemen were able to neutralize Sue's effectiveness. And for some reason, Miami's well-paid and or highly drafted defensive ends, Cameron Wake, Andre Branch, Charles Harris, were too often unable to capitalize on the extra attention on Sue. That's a little interesting to make that statement. I mean, Sue barely played with Charles Harris, who was a rookie at the time. Barely played any snaps. I would have loved to, I mean, let's get past that. But Wake and, I don't know. I don't know. The Dolphins had only 30 sacks in 2017, 26th in the NFL. The year prior, 33 sacks, which was tied for 19th. We just did not get a lot of leads in games, but let's continue on because I'm gonna get off track here. Sue also didn't have the impact on the team's rush defense that the team may have been envisioned. Last year, Miami improved to 14th in rushing yards allowed per game. In 2016, Miami was 31st in the NFL. Enter Quinn. As previously mentioned, Sue was scheduled to make $17 million this season, counting $26.1 million against the cap. Quinn's 2018 contract is worth $10.3 million with a cap hit of $11.4 million. As of now, Quinn's cap hit is scheduled to be the biggest on the Dolphins this season, ahead of only Andre Branch at $10 million. That's so there you go. But Quinn's contract is not unreasonable considering his production and age. Sue, 31, has averaged 6 sacks and 36 tackles over 8 seasons with 4 career forced fumbles. Quinn, 27, has averaged 9 sacks and 22 tackles over 7 seasons with 21 career forced fumbles. The statistics are a bit skewed because Quinn started only 1 game as a rookie and missed 15 due to injuries in 2015 and in 2016. But Quinn has double-digit sacks and Pro Bowl potential, and opposite Cameron Wake may create more game-changing plays than Sue did. Quinn should also benefit from a move from outside linebacker in a 3-4 defense last season back to a pass-rushing defensive end in a 4-3 defense, which is more of his natural position. On pass rushing downs, the Dolphins are theoretically lining up Cameron Wake, Charles Harris, Andre Branch, Robert Quinn, which should create a ton of pressure. Miami can also mix in William Hayes, Jordan Phillips, and Devon Gottschalk into the interior in those situations. Miami really needs Quinn to end up as one of the greater under-the-radar trades of this offseason, and to regain his form as one of the NFL's best pass-rushing defensive ends. Quinn was just a Pro Bowler in 2013 and 2014, and a first-team All-Pro in 2013. So you guys know how I feel about Quinn. I think he's a great player when he's healthy. When he's healthy, he's a dominant player, and he's not just a pass rusher. He can set the edge better than anybody on our team when he's healthy. It's not even close. So I love what Robert Quinn brings to the table. Like I said, I've never seen. I mean, the athleticism he brings alone should help this defense. Thank God Tyrod Taylor is no longer in our division. So that's not going to be as big of an issue because all of the quarterbacks as of right now are stationary. Who are going to be playing. The draft might change that. We don't know. But to add that athletic presence is going to help us a ton when we go up against athletic players at the quarterback position that can make plays with their feet. That's something that our defensive line has struggled to contain. Cameron Wake hasn't been able to do it. It was disgusting to watch him try to play run defense against the option offense of Carolina. It was honestly disturbingly, it was bad. It was really, really bad. When Charles Harris is out there, obviously he's more athletically gifted to handle that kind of thing. But Robert Quinn upgrades us from an athletic standpoint. Our defense is faster now that he's on it, and I think potentially is going to be deadly in terms of pass rush, in terms of if he can stay healthy. He's one of the best 4-3 defensive ends in the league. And not to mention Charles Harris's growth, and obviously Will Hayes, who's going to come in, who's going to add a lot of balance to that defensive line, which I love. I'm very excited to see what this defensive line can do. I think they need to be helped out with some of the linebackers. I think too much of the blame gets dumped onto them as a defense, especially since we run a wide 9. When you run a wide 9 with your defensive line, you're not really expecting your defensive linemen to make a ton of plays in the run defense. From that standpoint, you're really expecting your linebackers to clean up some of that stuff. So if you don't have elite linebackers in that type of a system, it's going to be hard to stuff the run. And we rely a ton on Rashad Jones to be basically a linebacker, because when we bring him into the box, he's the only one really making plays in the backfield on our football team. So we really need to solidify that linebacker position. That is a huge need. If we went out and got a Roquan Smith, that would help us out a ton, because he can fly around to the football. He can go sideline to sideline and really help out the defensive line in the running game as well. And like I said, what Matt Burke was able to do at the beginning of the season was really tremendous in how he was stuffing the run with Rashad Jones, and rotating safeties like that in the box. I think was pretty genius. But let's say we do draft Derwin James, maybe move TJ down in the middle, pick up a linebacker maybe in the second round. Who that might be, who knows? And I think that'd be a very interesting strategy to go with in the draft, because I think TJ would definitely upgrade us, and I do think he can play linebacker. He's just like Mark Barron when Mark Barron was switched to linebacker. Similar body frame. They're both great box players, super physical guys, and athletic enough to guard tight ends over the middle. So we'll see what happens when it comes to that. But I do think Robert Quinn does upgrade this defensive line. I think he does upgrade this defense. Is he better than Sue? No, he's not a better player than Ndamukong Suh. Can he be? Yes, he absolutely can be. Will he be? That's a huge if. We don't know. Hopefully he can have a healthy 16-game season and can return to the Robert Quinn that was terrorizing the NFC West for many years. This next news story is very interesting. This comes from the Palm Beach Post as well. Dolphins coach Adam Gase learned hard lessons from a crazy 2017 season. It turns out there is no chapter in the instruction manual for coaching an NFL team that explains how to handle a hurricane turning your season upside down before it even starts. There's no section on proper procedure for moving past an assistant coach getting fired for sending a video of himself doing cocaine to a Las Vegas entertainer. And what's the protocol for those times when a starting linebacker disappears the night before a game and the team is on edge as it fears the absolute worst? If he has time during what's left of this offseason, maybe Adam Gase can write some hopeful additions to that handbook now that he survived coaching the 2017 Miami Dolphins. The insanity of that season was such that losing the starting quarterback and middle linebacker to preseason knee injuries barely registers. Totally forgot about Raekwon McMillan when I was talking about linebackers. Putting Raekwon in the middle, who is a physical linebacker out of Ohio State, and putting Roquan on the weak side would be tremendous. All right, let me keep going on here. Let's see here. I lost my place here. Okay, here we go. And I said, quote, I think we had a lot of it. There was a lot of a little. He's talking about the stuff that was going on, all the crazy stuff that was going. When he said, I think we had a lot of it, of distractions. That isn't such an easy thing to explain. Gase avoided these kinds of questions during the season because he didn't want to set a tone of excuses making it in his locker room. He's more willing to discuss it now, but it's still difficult to be totally open without outing certain players. Let's say, quote, there were some big things and some little things that came up last year. A lot of us had to deal with a lot of adversity. I think it was a learning lesson for a lot of us. I thought he was pretty... hopefully we'll get to it. I'm not going to say it yet. Adam also said, quote, there were some tough spots to get put in, but I thought some guys did well. Some guys didn't handle it as well. We probably learned a lot about a lot of guys. It was one of those things that at the time you're going through it, it's not really a fun thing to do, but it's a great learning experience moving forward. With that backdrop, it's easy to understand why a Dolphins official said last week one of the team's goals in 2018 is, quote, hopefully just to have a normal season. It's so understandable that Gase keeps harping on the maturity and dependability he thinks Miami added to his locker room this offseason. So very interesting stuff. Obviously a lot of crazy things happened in 2017. That it was one of the more disappointing seasons. I mean, we really tried to cover up some of the band-aids or cover up some of the holes that we had on the roster due to injuries, like Raekwon McMillan, and some of the lineup changes we had to make because of that. Then obviously going out and getting Jay Cutler, who we thought was going to be able to stand in for Tannehill and still lead us to the playoffs. So we try to overcompensate for a lot of different things. And then obviously when the hurricane hit, and then obviously Lawrence Timmons lost his mind. The offensive line thing, Chris Ford, and all that other stuff. It was a tough season. It was an absolute circus, and it was so tough as a fan to go through, because we totally forgot how good of a season we had a year before, where we had zero expectations going into that season. For that particular football team, we thought Adam Gase is going to have to, really rip out Joe Philbin's Dolphins and really try as fast as he possibly could to install his own version of the team as fast as he possibly could and start winning football games. And he did it right away, with none of his players that he's drafted on that roster, none of his vision on that roster, and was still able to guide us to 10 victories, which we hadn't done in almost 10 years. So going from that to the 2017 season, where we built off of it, we had a very, very solid draft that year that I thought, and I thought it did show up this season, and with some of the players coming out of the 2016 drafts that we hoped would grow, and obviously Tannehill had his best games before he got injured. There's a lot to look forward to in 2017. It just never came to fruition, and very upsetting as a Dolphins fan. Now, hopefully, we see those things happen this year. Obviously, there's been a lot of turnover in the roster from that 2016 season. J.H.I. is no longer on it. Jarvis is no longer on it. Mike Pouncey's no longer here. Sue's no longer here. So those are a lot of big names that really helped us get to 10 wins. But it goes to show you a lot can change in 2 seasons in the NFL. And I think this offense is going to be pretty good. I really do. I just have a really good feeling. I think the trenches are solidified, which is a huge plus for us to get that solidified before the draft even, which I thought was huge. Now we can focus on some of the other things on this roster and not have to worry about it. If you guys remember how, before free agency started, how many holes we had on the offensive line alone, and because we didn't know, Juwan James could have been a Bronco easily. Like, we could have had a ton of holes on this offensive line, and what the Dolphins were able to do in terms of clearing cap space and going out and getting some of these players is pretty awesome. And so this draft is going to be huge, and I cannot wait to see what the Dolphins do, because they can really take advantage of it. And like I said, the possibilities are endless what the Dolphins could achieve in this draft. If they somehow, let's say they get Roquan Smith, like I said, Derwin James, not to repeat myself again, and get a developmental quarterback like a Lamar Jackson, if we trade back up into the first round, giving up our second round pick to get him, and those would be our 2 first-round picks, that would be pretty dang amazing. So there's a lot of different things the Dolphins could do, and I hope to God they don't take Vita. I'm sorry, I'm not a huge fan. I think he's a great player. I just don't think he's a top 11 pick because of the position he plays. That's just me. And I think the Dolphins need a superstar playmaker like a Derwin James or a Roquan Smith that can affect the game in a multitude of ways. So I think those two are bigger, and Mika Fitzpatrick as well, to throw his hat in the ring. So we'll see what the Dolphins can do with all of those things. I'm excited to see what Tannehill is going to do. Coming back off of the ACL tear, I think that's going to be very interesting. So there's a lot to look forward to as a fan, as Dolphins fans. I'm very excited, very, very excited to see what they can do. I'm actually very, very excited. I think the Dolphins are in a very, very good position. Let's hope to God they don't mess it up. But let's just hope. So that is going to be it, guys. I'm Skyxer1083. What would be your guys' dream round 1 and round 2? I think mine would be Lamar Jackson and Derwin James. I think that would be my dream 1-2 punch, because I really do think, especially in today's NFL, with Adam Gase's brain and how he would develop Lamar, and maybe if Tannehill didn't work out down the line, how he would build around him and call plays around a player like that would be very interesting. And Adam Gase can develop with the best of them. He can make any quarterback look good. I mean, look what he did with David Fells, for God's sakes. I think that with accompanied with Derwin James, who I think who's going to be a very, very good player, and is very versatile as well. He can do a lot of different things. I think would be a tremendous draft for the Miami Dolphins. That's 2 potential. I think Derwin's a Pro Bowl, and I think Lamar Jackson could be that. So That is going to be it, guys. I am Skaggs83. It was a shorter episode, not a whole lot of news, but I will see you guys in the next one.